Oh, hello, world. What is up? Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Matt Forte. We're here live at the Build Studio in New York City. Only 5 episodes remain in the final season.
Boo.
Boo, indeed. I concur. The final season for the CBS series Criminal Minds. After 15 years, hundreds of episodes, the world is bracing, and we're getting ready to say goodbye, reluctantly, to our friends at the BAU. Joining me now, Mr. David Rossi himself, the great, the one, the only. Joe Mantegna's right here, everybody. Make some noise for Joe. Come on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Joe, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing, sir? Very nice to have you here.
I'm doing great. Always great to be in New York City.
It's always great to have you here.
Birthplace of my youngest daughter.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yep.
So you find yourself coming back here often, not
I
just
come
for
back
press?
when I can.
Whenever
I
you
do
can.
love it.
You walk around. Well, it's nice to have you here. I'm excited you're here right now, especially with what's going on with the show and everything. It's very exciting to have you here. Does it feel different yet? Does it feel like the end? Has it sunk in that you guys are done yet?
Yeah. I mean, it's sunk in. I mean, what's been great though. I mean, they throw that term around loosely. Oh, we're like a family. You always hear that about every show. But you know what? This one really was. I mean, and especially the final 8 of us that wound up doing the show for the last few seasons. We still stay in touch almost daily. I mean, I'm sure by the end of the day I'll have a text thread going here, letting me know what every one of them are doing at the moment, yeah. And so it's been great. I mean, but yet everything comes to an end, and I've been in this business long enough to know that I've been blessed to have done it as long as I have. So
Well, I'm excited to talk to you about the experience, man. I remember hearing somewhere you were saying when you first came on the show, a lot of the crew you actually already knew because it's from Joan of Arcadia.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, it was interesting. On the last day of Joan of Arcadia, I went up to the offices. I probably just say goodbye to the office people, and I noticed there were all these cardboard boxes, and they all said "Criminal Minds" on them. And I said, "What?" I thought maybe we'd been arrested or something, or. I said, what are all these boxes? And they said, well, the producer of Joan of Arcadia had just taken on a new show, or the pilot of a new show called Criminal Minds, and he was taking basically the whole crew with him. Yeah. And I said, oh, okay, cool. I said, well, good luck to you all, and, take care. And I got my car, and off I went. And it was a couple of years later when I get the call, basically, to show up at that one.
Amazing. So how many of them have remained over the years now? Here we
are. In the crew?
Yeah.
Oh, there was. I'd say by the time we ended the show after 15 years, I would say close to half of the crew was still that group. So, in essence, I'd been working with those same people for something like 17 years.
Yeah, and that's why that seemingly random line of questioning. I was just like kind of dissecting like how much of a family it really is, not just all your co-stars, but everyone there. You've all worked together forever.
And the crew is just important to me as the cast. I mean, I don't make any differentiation between what somebody's job is. I mean, you have all you figure counting the Teamsters and the people working behind the scenes and this and that and everything. You're talking about a company of close to 300 people. And it's not that you're seeing every single one of them every day, but over 15 years, you get to see them pretty often. And then there'll be events. I mean, I'm thinking our 200th episode, which was a significant milestone. They flew us all to Las Vegas, and they rented some hall in one of the hotels there. And I'm talking, they flew everybody, the entire crew, families, everybody, kids. So you're talking about maybe there was 1,000 people, and so it's like going to an Italian wedding, which I'm very used to. So that was great. And so you get close to everyone, and you get close to their families even, and stuff like that. It's a good thing.
Wow, it's literally a small town, like a community's worth of people that
without
all
question,
come together.
It's a small town. And we were always kind of like in our own world anyway, because even though we were on CBS, Criminal Minds, and it's on CBS, what a lot of people didn't realize is we were co-produced by ABC. And that's and on ABC is where we're on everywhere else in the world. And this show's very popular worldwide. But literally, so when I would do press tours in Europe, let's say, or people on the cast would go to Japan or Australia or wherever it may be, you'd think we were on an ABC show because we're traveling with all the ABC shows. So in a way, it was almost like living on both sides of the street.
What a bizarro world. You leave the States and you have a different network, different everything. What was the biggest surprise internationally? Because when you're on a show for this long and as big as it is, there's fans everywhere.
Well, one of the biggest surprises was I remember I was the first year I went to Monte Carlo. They have a huge television festival there every year. And so I arrived in Monte Carlo the first time I'd been there. And I remember one of the journalists comes up to me and the first thing he says is, "Do you have any idea how popular you are in France?" And I said, no, I don't. He goes, you are the most popular show in France, more than the CSI shows. And da. I said, well, good. It's good to know, It'll help in my next negotiations for the contract. Maybe if I ever do French TV, but it was very sweet. But it makes you appreciate the fact that, and helps you understand that what you do does have that kind of impact worldwide. And without realizing it, we're having a good day on the set and doing the show and enjoying it. And it humbles you. You realize you're providing entertainment for people worldwide, and some people are very invested in the show, and God bless them for being so.
You've had a pretty prolific career. You've done a lot of things. You're known for a lot of things. Are you known more so for certain roles around the world? Like if you go to Italy, they know you for this. If you go to France, they know you for Rossi. If you go,
yeah, it depends. I mean, obviously the exposure on Criminal Minds is huge, and so that's been very big currently. But when I did Godfather 3, I remember when that came out, and I still get that. I'll be in an airport and I'll hear somebody yelling across the terminal, Joey Zaza, or Airheads will be a big one, or I'll often get people like in their 30s come up to me and say, when I was a kid, Baby's Day Out, that was my favorite movie, And yeah, okay, yeah, when you were a kid, they've got their own children they're showing the movie to, So it really will depend on the crowd and the situation. I've been doing this this is my 50th year. I mean, professional.
For applause. Seriously, 50 years
50
in a
years.
business. 50 years beyond anything.
That's
That's amazing, but in this...
No, I know. 50 years professionally. Actually, it's my 51st because now that we're into 2020, but 2019 was my 50th year. Yeah.
What was the first thing you did? What was it?
The very first thing was the play Hair. As all those you New Yorkers know, there was a big musical here in New York. I did the Chicago production for about a year and a half, and then did the national tour for a while. I was a musical comedy guy. Then I did Godspell after that for about a year. Then I did, here on Broadway, I did Studs Terkel's Working, 1978, where I became very close friends with the great Patti LuPone, who's to this day a very close friend of mine. We did that show together, and I even have 2 songs on that album that James Taylor wrote. But that was my last musical, 1978, when I did Working. And then my career kind of took a different path, and next time I was on Broadway was with Glenn Ross, David Mamet, 1984, and that production pretty much changed my life from that point on.
Forgive my ignorance, but you're saying that you were in Godspell. Is that the famed production of Godspell that like Eugene Levy and like half of SCTV met?
Oh, I think I predated some of that.
Are you pre?
Yeah, I mean, I was the Chicago production as well of that, and they may have done it. There were different companies. There was New York, Boston, Chicago, whatever. Then there was
see how small world it was.
Yeah, no, I didn't work with Eugene or any of them, but I got a feeling they may have done it a little bit later.
Yeah. I was doing the math. Look at the IMDb. Second only to the voice for Fat Tony on The Simpsons.
Yes, I've been doing that a long time.
I was going to say, you've been doing that for a while, but this is the character that you've consistently been with for, I think, the longest amount of time, right? Like,
yeah, Fat Tony I've been on 29 years, but that's just my voice. This role I've been doing 15, I wound up doing 15 seasons, so since 2007,
that's a very unique experience to have, to be able to be with a character and be one with a show and a team for that long. Has that informed other things you've done? Having that experience, has that changed the way you approach other projects, the way you direct, the way you act, and anything else?
Perhaps, but I come from the theater, and that's all I did for the first 15 years of my career. So I was used to the fact of doing some things that can have longevity. Like I said, I did Glengarry here on Broadway for a year. I toured it for 6 months. I did Speed the Plow here for 3 or 4 months with Madonna back in 1988. I did Hair for a year. I did Godspell for a year. So I know what it was like to continually do a character for a long period of time, even though it was theater versus film or television. So I knew what that kind of continuity was like. I think that it's the lifestyle more than anything that you get accustomed to. It's a whole different lifestyle making a television show versus making a movie versus doing theater. And that's the biggest difference. I mean, acting is acting is acting. You make adjustments to fit that particular situation. But beyond that, it's really just the lifestyle you're living. One is you come in doing the same thing every night. You come into the theater, there's a certain routine, same time. You do a television series, everything's out the window. we may shoot the last scene the first day, the first scene the last day, and
Shoot out a sequence.
all the time, because it's all will depend on the location. If the episode ends with a guy jumping off a building and you've only rented the building for that day, you've got to shoot. That's the day you shoot it, and then you move on.
Is there any trick for you as an actor to mentally keep track of your own continuity of like, all right, this is the end of this episode, so I've got to be here, but next week we're shooting the beginning of
a little bit, but you learn that, you realize that it's kind of in there. You know what I mean? I think when you first start out, you worry about that. You think, oh, wait, no. I think at this point I was supposed to have, I broke my leg in the, earlier in the episode, but we haven't shot that yet. Do I have a limp? Or, things like that. But they're usually the people like script supervisor, people who handle continuity. They're pretty good about maybe reminding you, hey, you have to do this, you dress like that, But you tend to, it becomes rote. It becomes something that's ingrained in you that you kind of know if you've done your homework, you kind of know where you're at and where you're supposed to go.
I saw, I think you guys were all on The Talk recently, like everybody.
Yeah, we were, yeah.
It was really fun to see you guys all together. And you had mentioned, you have a show that's been on for this long, you have fans that are this invested, you owe it to them to like tie it up, put a nice bow on it. Absolutely. And I'm curious, were you guys, I don't know about stressing, but how aware were you of the pressure of putting a bow on a series that has so many the storylines, so many characters? It's like, that's a hard thing to do. Yeah,
well, the pressure is on the writing staff, I mean, in essence, but I think they were well aware that we had a great showrunner a woman who was very due to her attention to that. She, as I feel the same way, we felt it was very important that if you have a show that's been running 15 seasons, you owe it to the fans to wrap it up as the best possible way. You don't want to just because. They haven't just watched the show. If they've been watching it that long, they just didn't tune in because they want to know what the crime of the week was. Right. You know what I mean? They obviously liked something about the chemistry and the camaraderie between the individuals. They got invested into who they were. So, and I always stress that point, even like I wound up directing, I think, 9 episodes of the show. And I would always push for the episodes that were less about the crime and more about the relationships within the cast, the immediate cast, and even relationships with the people we were doing the show with, like even the unsub, let's say, or victims or whatever it may be. Because to me, that's the heart of the show, because that's the heart of life. Regardless of what your job is, you still have to interact with other human beings, and some people have a pretty tough job. And it was also my goal to represent the FBI in the best possible way, because I've been to Quantico numerous times. And yeah, and so once you go there and you see what these people do for a living, you start to appreciate, thank God we have them.
What do they allow you to see? What did you get to see? What's a day like when you got
plenty. I really do. Well, luckily they liked the show a lot because I think they knew we were kind of, and they weren't necessarily fans of all FBI shows. There were a couple shows that they thought were a little too soap opera-y for them and all. And in fact, I would often get asked, doesn't it bother you to do that show because it's so grim, because it's so graphic and it shows these things? And my answer has always been no. And the reason is I felt that would be a disservice to the people who really do the job. What kind of squeamish guy am I to say, oh, God, this is creepy that this guy's got an axe in his head, when as soon as they say cut, the guy with the axe in his head gets up and gets a sandwich. That's the nature of the show. Of show business. But these people are doing this for a job, and there is no cut and there is no fake blood and all that. And so I was always an advocate of like, no, we don't need to pull any punches. We don't need to soften this. We don't need to pretend that it's like when a person gets shot, they just go, ooh, and keel over. It can be pretty grim and graphic, and that's life. And it's not always, music and roses here, and so thank God we have the people who combat that.
Well, it's a consistency I've seen in all the stuff you've talked about over the years and talking about this show. So you've always made a point, at some point, to shine a light on the actual men and women that this show is based on the actual agents, on the actual law enforcement. Right. You do a lot in your spare time supporting your local law enforcement. All that. Did that appreciation, did you have that before you were on the show? Did that grow through experiencing this?
I think it's grown. It especially with my, I do a lot with the United States military. I've been hosting the National Memorial Day concert. This will be my 19th year doing that in Washington, D.C. Gary Sinise and I have been doing it together for I brought Gary in about 17 years ago, and we've been doing it.
Gary, yeah.
I did because Charles Durning brought me in, who was the great Charles Durning, the actor. He was a Silver Star recipient in World War II. He happened to mention to me, we were doing the series, First Monday was one of my first TV series with James Garner, was about the Supreme Court. And Charlie says to me, it was sometime like in April of that year, he says, Joe, next month, Memorial Day, would you mind coming to Washington, D.C. and doing this? I do this concert called the National Memorial Day Concert. I'd never even seen it. I didn't even know they were done this concert. For me, Memorial Day, for most people, was, oh yeah, you know, the Indianapolis 500, barbecue, have a nice weekend. But I loved Charlie, and I said, oh, it sounded interesting, Charlie. I said, gee, all four of my uncles, actually 5 of the uncles I was closest to in my life, all served in World War II, so there were a lot of vets in my family. I grew up in the Vietnam era, but due to the draft and me having a high draft number because of my birthday, I never got drafted. So I never thought much about the military. My uncles never talked about, because they were combat veterans, but they, as often the case, they didn't talk about it. But I said, sure, I'll go. Well, I wound up doing that concert that year. It was the Memorial Day right after 9/11, so it was Memorial Day 2002. So so now I'm being asked to do this concert, and I don't even know what so they tell me, here's what you're going to do. You're going to get up on stage, and you're going to read this, and you're going to do that. What I wound up doing was reading the words of 4 New York firemen who all 4 of their sons were killed showing up at 9/11. And I'm on the stage, which is built in front of the United States Capitol, and in front of me are 250,000 people. It's a live free concert they do every year. And behind me, the Washington Symphony Orchestra is playing Mozart's Requiem, and on these screens that are 3 stories tall on each side of me, they're showing footage of the planes flying into the World Trade Center. And I'm having to say words, and sitting in the front row in front of the 250,000 people, on the first row are the 4 firemen in their dress blue uniforms, all fathers of firemen who lost in that tragedy, with their wives. And I'm having to say lines like, on a good day, you're going through the rubble and you find a scrap of your son's uniform. Because they had interviewed these men earlier, and this is where this is coming from. Well, the music's playing. At that moment, I realized this was something way beyond anything I'd ever done as a performer or an actor in my entire life. That I'm relating history, and the history was the history that I don't have to explain to you. This is New York. So from that moment, when it finished, and I finished the last words, it's hard for me to talk about it now, because I mean I had to walk down the steps and hug these firemen and their wives, and my legs were like, it was like spaghetti, and I walked off that stage thinking how lucky I was, how blessed I was to live in this country and to you know been through the things, have gotten through the things that I've gotten through in my life, but to see, okay, this is important stuff. And so when they asked me then to become part of this concert from that point on, I readily agreed. And then Ozzie Davis used to be the host. He passed away. They came to me, asked me if I would like to host it on my 3rd year there. And that's when I said, there's somebody else that needs to do this show, because he is, I think, one of the greatest patriot we have in this country, not just in show business, but just in general. And that's Gary Sinise, because what he does for our military, for the wounded and all that.
I talked to him twice for his books.
So you know, so I called him up. He said, "I'm glad to do it." And once he came in, I said to him, "Gary, why don't we just co-host this thing together from this point on?" He said, "I'm in."
I'm there. Yeah.
And that's what we've been doing.
That's amazing. And again, I'm doing the timeline in my head here. That all predates your time on Criminal Minds. So now you've
Right.
So you've got that experience. You've been doing that for a couple of years, and here comes along this opportunity to represent.
Right. In fact, because I did Joan of Arcadia then, and then I did Criminal Minds.
Yeah. And so for when this opportunity came around, there was no hesitation. It was, here's a chance to shine a light on some servicemen and women and people that are working extra hard to protect us.
Did
it factor into that decision?
Well, also on Criminal Minds, what I did is, I had some input as to who my character was. So one of the first things I said was, please make my character a former military. So we made him a former Marine, because 2 of my uncles were Marine Corps. And I have pictures of my Uncle Sam, and we look alike. And so I had a picture of him on my desk as Rossi. And so if they would pan across, people might think, is that supposed to be his dad or somebody? It was actually my Uncle Sam.
Who's your uncle?
And also beyond that, I got to be very close friends with the Marine Corps in Washington, D.C., because they honored me once at this thing they call the Friday Night Dress Parade. They do a thing in the summertime on Fridays it's called 8th and I, the barracks in Washington. It's the oldest Marine barracks on Earth. And they do this thing where they have the silent drill team perform, and my wife and children are there. I mean, I can't even describe it. It's just mind-blowing. But anyway, I was able to direct, as I said, in some of the episodes I directed, and 3 of the 9 that I directed, I brought in a dear friend of mine, Meshach Taylor. People may remember him from Designing Women and other things. He's one of my closest friends. We did hair together back in the day. So he and my wife and I had been close for 50 years, forever. So I was able to, my assistant wrote an episode, co-wrote an episode that introduced Meshach's character, his character being my former commanding officer in Vietnam, Rossi's commanding officer in Vietnam. Why is he homeless now on the streets of Los Angeles? In other words, we're in LA on a case, and I realize this homeless guy on the street looks familiar, and I realize that's my commanding officer. And then all of a sudden the picture goes to black and white, and you see young versions of us. They hired 2 actors to play us. And for me, that was so important and so great, because we were able to shine a light first on homelessness for veterans. And also, I'm a spokesperson for a group called New Directions in Los Angeles, which is not a halfway house, really, but a place that takes in veterans with drug problems, alcohol, whatever. They run it like a military establishment, and then those people, they teach them skills, they go on to jobs and stuff like that. And it's a wonderful organization. So to be able to do that and couch it within a dramatic television series, it was a no-brainer. It was great.
Whenever you had the opportunity to direct, it's always been a very personal experience for you. I don't know the answer to this. Sounds like I do based on what you were saying, but you don't direct anymore in the last 5 that we have. You didn't come back and direct.
No, even the last 10 episodes.
The last 10
they were,
anything, yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, they wanted to spread it out among people, some of the directors who we've had in the past, some of that, which is fine. I think the last one I directed was from the season 14.
But you did recently direct, I think it's in Chicago now, the Lenny Bruce play.
Yeah, I had it. Was here. It was off Broadway.
It was off Broadway
for about 9 months. Now it's in Chicago. It's called I'm Not a Comedian. I'm Lenny Bruce. Yeah. Written and acted by a guy named Ronnie Marmo. It's done really well. We had a great run here in New York. We had now it's been extended twice in Chicago. It's still running there. It's at the Royal George Theater in Chicago right now.
I bring that up because I'm curious, with this coming to a close and the bittersweetness of all of that, like what are you looking forward to? Like, are you going to direct more? Are you looking forward to playing other characters? What are you thinking?
I don't know.
Doing nothing? Just relaxing?
No, I don't relax. I don't know. I'm not that kind of guy. There's the quick and the dead. I want to stay with the quick as long as I can, I did a pilot for Amazon that I'm waiting to hear the show gets picked up. My oldest daughter has autism. And this pilot, which was created by Jason Katims, who did Parenthood and Friday Night Lights, it's a wonderful half-hour show about 3 young adults on the spectrum who live together, and that's the dynamics of that. And I play the father of the one boy, and it's a beautifully written script. So if that show goes, then I do that. I'm supposed to direct a film this coming spring, loosely based on when Frank Sinatra Jr. was kidnapped back in the 60s. But it's actually a black comedy in many ways, because the guys who did it were kind of like stumble bums. And so, and the characters of Frank Jr. and Sr. actually come across very well in the sense that it's also a picture about the bonding of a father and their son under what could be horrifying circumstances, but as it turns out, really was not so much.
You mentioned stumble bum kidnappers, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't draw a parallel to Baby's Day Out.
Oh yeah, I was the king of the stumble bum kidnappers. Yeah, I got beat up pretty good in that one. I mean, I had gorillas throw me around. I had fall off buildings. Yeah. The one mistake I made with that movie was when my youngest daughter was only about 1 years old when I made the movie. So when the movie came out, she was about a little over 2 now. And I thought, great, finally I could take my daughters to see something I'm in. Because most of the movies at that time, I had done things were like Godfather 3 and The Last Don, things where I'm getting shot, blasted, whatever. I said, this is great. My kid's going to see a nice children. So I take them to the premiere, not even thinking. Within 5 minutes of the movie opening, I think the first thing that happens was something lands on my head, or something smashes and hurts me, and I realize my daughter is sitting there she's like, ah, her father is being destroyed on the big screen, And I'm thinking, oh, this was a mistake. Okay.
It was very much of that time we had Home Alone, and we realized as a country that we love watching bumbling idiots get beat up as they try to do something nefarious.
Yeah. I was the fourth stooge.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's very Stooges-esque.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. I gotta go. We got some questions from the audience I want to make sure we get to before we get out of here. And the bunch in the room, they got some microphones. Let's turn it over, make some time. First one's coming to us. You got a microphone. Looks like it's you. Go for it.
Hi. You had discussed that the imagery, because it's fake and the crimes are fake, that you don't like to be squeamish about it. But dealing with this imagery over 15 seasons, is there any time when it does affect you or the other cast, and how do you make it not affect you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, some people it affects more. I mean, Kirsten really was like that. I mean, Kirsten's character, she incorporated that into her character of not liking to look at those photos, not liking to deal with that, all that. And that really is Kirsten, and I understand that. But again, I did a movie called Homicide many years ago for David. It was a David Mamet film. And this was not the TV series. This was the film. And I remember part of our research, William H. Macy played my partner. And part of our research is we met with we shot it in Baltimore. And we had a meeting with 2 Baltimore homicide detectives. Cool. And they said, and you could tell when they came into the room, it was like, oh, so you guys want to play homicide cops? Okay, we're going to give you a quick half an hour of what it's like to be a homicide cop. And they brought with them their book, their photo album. And I remember they plopped that thing down in front of us, Bill and I sitting next to each other, and they start flipping through the pages to show us, this is what we deal with every day. This is what we show up and find. Boom. Boom. I'm not going to even go into some of the things. But by the 4th page, I remember I looked at Bill, and he was like, I think I got a wardrobe fitting. I got to go. Yeah. And I was like, I get you, Bill. But I thought, I'm not going. I mean, because I want these cops to understand, okay, I'm in. But I believe me, I would have just as soon hit the bricks myself. But I said, okay, I get it. Let's go. Let's keep going. Yeah. But it made me realize that this is what they have to put up with, and that's why you hear about the suicide rate among people in law enforcement or in the military, the drug use, the alcohol abuse. There's a reason for that. So my feeling is this: I have to represent these people, and to me they're heroes. They're all heroes for doing that kind of work. And I remember even when I got my star on the Walk of Fame, I was fortunate enough about 5-6 years ago. In my speech, the one thing I said was, as I concluded, I said, you have a street here where you have people's names and stars. And for many of them, they've got that because they made a living portraying heroes. But you go to Washington, D.C., they have a wall up with people's names on their wall. And their names are on that wall because they were heroes. So there's a big difference between that and that. So all I'm saying is, I find it very easy to get over that gruesome stuff when I was dealing with on a show. And every day think to myself, thank God I'm just doing the pretend version of it. And those people that really do the job, they're the ones that should get all the credit, not the actors up here for portraying it.
It provides a sobering amount of perspective.
Oh, without question.
Yeah, for sure. Great question. Thank you so much for that. Kate, I got a few more. Let's go for it. You got a microphone? Hey, right here. What's up?
If you could be any other character from the show, who would you be and why?
On Criminal Minds, yeah. I'd have to be Matthew Gubler. It would be a cross between him or Shamar.
What a beautiful hybrid human you've just described.
Yeah. Well, only because those are they know it, that they were like they're like the 2 sons I never had. I mean, and for totally different reasons. But I'm very close to both of them. But as I am, though, to Adam and to Daniel. But Matthew is, Matthew spent a lot of time here. He went to NYU, I think, right here. And I think to be him on the show would probably be interesting, because I got to say, when I first looked at those early episodes to make the decision if I wanted to do it, because I wasn't familiar with the show really that much when I first was asked to do the show. Even though, like I said, my friend Mishak watched it, I don't watch a lot of television. So I watched they gave me a bunch of episodes of the 1st and 2nd season, and I was fascinated primarily with that character. Because I thought, this guy, who is this guy? Is this guy really like this? I mean, I was now curious as to what this human being was like. Yeah. And and I love them to death. And but I feel that way about all of them. I mean, I wouldn't if I had to play any of them. I mean, even one of the girl roles, just in terms of their personalities, I'm in. Because I love them all dearly. But Matthew, and then maybe like a little Shamar doesn't hurt though either.
When you found out how much Matthew is Matthew, what was your... Because we've had him here, as I said before, and everything you love about his character is kind of like in real life turned to 11. Like,
yeah,
such a big presence and so larger than life.
Yeah, I mean, I just love it, and it's just so perfect that he wound up writing a children's book, and it's very successful, and that's his mind. I mean, Matthew's mind is like a playground. I mean, that you can spend a weekend in there and probably have a good time.
He's good fun. Can we do one more? Yes, please. Let's do one more. You've got a microphone right there. Go for it.
Hi, big fan. I was just wondering if you had to get any special training before you had to go on the show. Like, did you have to go to Quantico and actually train with them for the show?
That's a good question. We didn't. It wasn't a requirement, but I purposely did ask if I could, if given the opportunity. And since, like I say, because I go to Washington every year anyway for the Memorial Day concert, it fit perfectly. So when I made that request, they said, "Oh yeah, we can make that happen." Yeah. So I was able to do that. And also we always had FBI staff on our show anyway. There's a former FBI agent, Jim Clemente, who was from day one had been on our show, and right from the first episode through the last episode. So we always were able to. We always had somebody that we can talk to, if it need be. Just go, right to the source and say, Jim, is this? Because we really wanted to be as authentic as possible. I mean, you always take theatrical license no matter what you do on television or film, but I think we wanted to gain the respect of the FBI in the sense of look, we're going to try to, kind of show what you guys really have to go through. And I think they got it, and I think that's why they welcomed us when we would visit there.
Another great question. Thank you, guys. We got to wrap things up. I got to let you go. You got a million things to do, but it's been so fantastic having you back on the show, Joe.
No,
Thank
it's
you
great
for being here and
here.
hanging out with us.
Like as I said, I love coming to New York. It's a great show, and
we love having you here. And congratulations again. We're sad to see it go, but grateful for all the amazing television you've made for us over the years. And it's been very awesome. I look forward. Whatever's next, you got to come back and tell us all about it.
Glad to do it.
Thank you guys for being a great audience. Thanks to those who tuned in live. Criminal Minds is on CBS. There's only 5 left. Don't miss them. Make it louder than that. This is Joe Mantegna. Come on, let's go. There you go.